Hello everyone, Dusty here. I'm excited to announce that KitchenTableMeta is collaborating with Popo's Kitchen, a new site specializing in Dragon Ball Super singles. They have everything from Set 1 tournament promos to Union Force and even Dash Pack promos. And if that wasn't enough, you can even trade in your old cards for credit. Do you have a playset of Sensu beans you're not using? Turn them into credit and buy that shiny Jiren. Don't forget to tell them Dusty sent you by using the code KitchenTableMeta at the checkout to save 10% on your entire order. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Kitchen Table Meta. And this week's episode of Meta Monday, which is number 6, I believe, is going to be the lessons I learned from the release weekend this weekend for Union Force. And I'll tell you what, I went to 2 events. I did a little bit of testing with my team as well, like on Friday, a little bit on Saturday. Not as much as I wanted to. I mean, usually I just test, but we were busy with a lot of things. And I'll tell you, I learned a lot this weekend. I just really wanted to share it with you in this episode of Meta Monday. Another thing I wanted to say, though, real quick before we get started is I'm going to have a giveaway this month in November. And so Popo's Kitchen has been really nice enough to essentially give me a playmat to give out to you guys in some fashion. And so I've been thinking of a way to do that. And I think what I'm going to do is for everybody who uses my code, which is KitchenTableMeta for Popo's Kitchen, I have a list of all those people who use it. And essentially, I'll just put all those people into a drawing. And if you win the drawing, you'll get the play mats. And you'll get a Set 2 special pack as well from me, just as a thank you for supporting me and supporting Popo's Kitchen. It just really means a lot, guys. And like I said, I just cannot thank you guys enough for the support. If you haven't checked out my thank you video, please take a second and check it out. Like I said, it just really means a lot to have your guys' support, and I just want to give back as much as I can. Okay, so let's get into this. So the first thing I want to talk about is hand destruction is still powerful. And that really shouldn't come to too much of a surprise. Like I always say, hand advantage is king in this game, and any deck that kind of affects that is going to be a strong deck in any capacity. And honestly, you know, hand destruction has got a lot of new tools this set. I'll tell you, when I made the hand destruction deck, the Vegito hand destruction deck for Gen Con, after the event, I talked to the judges, and we really talked about the deck. I laid it out, and we talked about it. And, you know, they kind of assured me that there would be answers to it in Set 2. Like, it wouldn't be as, in my opinion, as oppressive as as it currently is. But actually, I think that's true. I don't want to act like it's super broken or anything like that. That's true, and I think I'll talk about that a little bit more going forward. But it actually has got a lot of good things too. It's also got a lot of strong pieces in this set as well, which I want to talk about a little bit. And so, in my mind, there's 3 ways you can build hand destruction currently. You have 3 leaders you can choose from, and that is the Vegeta hand destruction deck, which is probably still the best right now. I think the next leader I'll talk about will probably overtake him eventually, but I think right now it's just familiar, people know how to play it, and it's very good. Some things that Vegeta hand destruction always does, and I think that they've got some tools to do better with this set, is they're always the best hand destruction game, deck early game. And what I mean by that is, like, they're super strong early game. They have crit built into their leader, which is super powerful. They're able to put pressure on their opponent, and they can get a card every turn. They have that card advantage, and that's really powerful to kind of get the deck moving fast. Also, it can awaken early, which we talked about by taking a life, and it's also very consistent. That ability, Vegeta's ability, makes the deck extremely consistent. Very rarely will you not have an ejection on turn 2. You know, you can awaken almost the same time every game. You can just really, it's a very consistent deck. Now, it can struggle to late game threats, and honestly, it does have a pretty weak awaken side, but Vegeta hand destruction is still very powerful. It got Piccolo as a new threat that we talked about in the set review, and it has some other really neat things it can do. Next up is the Cell hand destruction deck. That's what I played at the Case event. Again, I got to play like maybe 3 games with it before I went to the event, so I was learning a lot about the deck as I played through the event. And honestly, it's probably going to be the best hand destruction deck. The one thing that it really struggles with is figuring out a way to awaken. Now, I use TN in my deck to awaken, and I think that's a very good way to do it. However, it can be punished by your opponent just attacking you once. And then if you don't use cards to survive that attack, it can really punish you by essentially making it so if you use TN twice to awaken, you go to 3 life instead of 4, which is a big deal. Also, just getting TN in your hand is pretty difficult. You know, Cell has no way to kind of, you know, siphon through his deck on the front side like Vegeta does, where Vegeta can go through his prizes and just draw so many cards. And so it can be very hard. It's very inconsistent early game, but then, you know, honestly, one of the most consistent decks late game. And so that's very kind of weird. But if you can find a way to reliably awaken, I'm not sold on TN being the way to do that yet. I have a lot of things to talk about with that deck once I do the deck profile on it. But it's just, again, it's just, you know, not the easiest to awaken. Now, what makes the deck insane, though, in my opinion, is that it's the best hand destruction in the mirror. So if you're sitting down, you're playing Cell hand destruction, your opponent is playing Vegeta hand destruction. In our testing, very brief testing, but in our testing, you know, Vegeta, I mean, Cell really had the advantage. And the main reason of that was because he has the ability to kill threats. So he can kill your Broly's. So I can set down, I can, you know, every turn kill your Broly's, but you can't kill mine. Vegeta hand destruction has no way to pressure my Broly. And so that way I can Broly on turn 4, I can Bio Broly on turn 4. You can't Bio Broly until turn 5, possibly later. And that's a huge advantage. That's a very, very big advantage with the deck. Another big advantage the deck has is it can run the 7-drop Cell. Which is the 7-drop. If you're playing a Android leader, your opponent has to discard down to 3 cards. That's insane for the hand destruction deck, because one of the things that the hand destruction decks really struggle against is your opponent awakening. And Cell is very good against that because he has access to that card. Now, Vegeta hand destruction has no way to interact with that card. Now, the Ginyu hand destruction deck that we're about to talk about has Cold Bloodlust, has ways to affect that, but Vegeta doesn't. And so you're just very good in the mirror. The only other thing I'll say is, you know, once he awakens, the ability to kill a threat every other turn with his ability, and maybe, you know, 2 a turn if you can, you know, build the deck correctly, is extremely powerful and something you should not overlook, because one thing that the hand destruction deck really falters on is being able to kill your threats once you get them out. And again, Cell really makes up for that weakness. So in my opinion, I think Cell will move to the best hand destruction deck once we figure out the list, because it is, you know, a new format and do a different type of deck. And the fact he can just literally just siphon out like objections and TNs and cards he doesn't want to use late game is just insane. Very, very powerful deck. And the last hand destruction deck I'll talk about is the Ginyu hand destruction deck, which is a deck that my teammate played, Jordan, and he just an amazing deck. And again, that deck it really does really well against the mid-game matchups. It's really good against like Gotenks decks. It's really good against decks that want to kill your threats, so that they want to, you know, if you want to try to kill your Bio Broly's or kill your big Broly's, you can use Cold Bloodlust to protect them. It's also pretty good against Cell as well. And so again, I don't want to talk too much about it because it's pretty similar, but again, you know, that's the 3 different types of hand destruction decks, and the ones you should be really looking out for whenever, you know, for the set, because they're going to be prevalent, they're going to be there, they are, you know, top decks. Hand destruction is probably still one of the best archetypes. And anyways, let's get into the counters a little bit. You know, we know these are powerful. How can you guys play against them? Well, the first thing you guys should really look forward to is, you know, you want to be trying to build these low hand decks. These are decks that use like Gohan and Gotenks, the Ghost attack Gotenks, and really take advantage of not having very many cards in your hand. Another thing is the Android leader, the Android 17 card that when he attacks, you draw back up to 4. That card just destroyed me one matchup. And so yeah, those kind of decks are very scary. I know I had one guy, I literally just milled him out of cards. I was like, you have no cards in your hand, your go. And he's like, cool, top deck, Ghost attack, Gotenks, played it out, made 3 15,000 double striking tokens, and I was like, holy crap, I don't know if I can win this game. And so those, if I was going to attack hand destruction, if hand destruction was big in my local meta, that would be the deck I would start working with and start tweaking with. Next up is just any leader that can awaken quickly. The Android 17-18 leader is like that. Again, that matchup I just talked about, I played against an Android 17-18 leader, and that was like one of my only losses. And it was just insane. I mean, he just destroyed me. It just felt very hard to win. I actually discarded his hand twice. And he just kept getting the Android 17 that refilled his hand, and I couldn't discard his hand like multiple times. So it was very difficult to win that matchup. I think that's a very good place to be as well if you're expecting a lot of hand destruction. Next up is, again, like we talked a little bit about, any kind of the cards that draw you cards. I call them the drawing battle cards. That's the promo Gohan, that's Kel, Android 17, Android 19, just any of those guys that draw you cards. Really, the hand destruction deck really struggles against those. And they can kill your threats, which is fine. But again, like, you know, if you can just keep drawing cards, and if you're running like a Galactic Frieza to protect those guys, I can see the hand destruction decks really struggling against those decks. And the last thing I'll talk about are indestructible threats. They're very good against hand destruction because hand destruction has very few ways to kill things on the battlefield, and then if you can play things they can't kill, they really struggle. It makes those cards kind of dead in their hands, and it also is this like constant pressure that they have to deal with, which they don't want to do. Like, they want to run you out of cards and have tons of cards in their hand, and if you have to keep making them use cards each turn, you know, to survive from these indestructible threats, it can put them in a very bad spot. Okay, and so we're going to move on to the next thing I learned this weekend. Again, I'm sorry I spent so much time on the hand destruction stuff, guys. I really apologize. It's just something that I love. Like, I love hand destruction. You know, it's a deck that I built, you know, like I said, a long time ago, and it's just, I wanted to really kind of update you guys. I thought about just doing it on this, the whole Meta Monday on this, but again, I want to give you guys other stuff. Kind of not everyone plays hand destruction, so I learned a lot more than that. So, okay, next up is Zamasu is strong. I just wanted to really say that because I played Zamasu in my local on Saturday before I went to the case tournament, and we actually won it. There's a little thing. I'm trying to get away from the mic. So it's a very powerful deck, very strong. It's something that isn't... I think I've seen a lot of people talk about how bad it is. Like, Zamasu's not very good. He's a little hard to play, and I'll get into it here in a second. But I just want to let you guys know, first and foremost, that indestructible is scary, guys. It's a very, very powerful keyword, and it's something that you should really be strong. You should really be thinking about it because it is very strong. It's very good against cell decks. They have no way to kill them. And so it's this constant pressure on Cell, which he hates, right? That kind of takes away that hand advantage that he has. Next up, it's really hard for Ginyu to stop it. So there's a lot of Ginyu decks, there's a lot of Cell decks right now, and Zamasu is in a pretty good spot against those decks. Now, I'll tell you, and I'll say this kind of both ways, but Zamasu is very good against Cold Bloodlust, but Cold Bloodlust can also be very good against him if you draw, like, so if your opponent draws all 4 Cold Bloodlust, it's kind of hard to win. Me and my teammate John Tata, you know, again, I played the deck Saturday, I built it for him, we tweaked it a little bit, he played it on Sunday. I wanted to play 2 different decks, so I have plenty to talk about. And he did very well. He actually ended up getting 9th. Which is fantastic. I think he maybe played 1 game with the deck before we actually got to the event. And so, you know, it's very good. Now, his biggest complaint was, you know, we still need some tweaking for the deck. I'll probably do that deck as my deck profile this week, by the way, guys. But his only complaint was, you know, hey, I played against a guy, he drew all 4 Cold Bloodlust, it felt really hard to win. Now, we're going to try some Zeno buttons and some other stuff to help that matchup, but it's important to note that you have a lot of threats that your opponent does not want to Cold Bloodlust. And that is awesome. However, your big finisher is awesome for them to Cold Bloodlust, which is your 10-drop Zamasu that has indestructible 30,000 every time it attacks. They choose a battle card, a life card, you choose an energy card, a life card, a card out of their hand, and they put all that in the bottom of their deck. That's insane. That's like one of the best control finishers in the game. Very, very powerful. And so, you know, that if it gets Cold Bloodlust, that stinks, right? That's usually, by the time you can play him out, you have like maybe 2, maybe 3 turns before you're dead. And so you really need him to attack every time to usually seal the deal of the game. But every other threat in your deck is actually pretty bad for them to Cold Bloodlust. And so you're pretty strong against the Cold Bloodlust Ginyu decks. And also the Ginyu decks, especially the Tricolor deck, really does not want to be playing against indestructible threats. That's not what it wants to do. It wants to kill your guys every turn. The last thing I'll say about this deck is that if you want to play this deck, a quick tip before I get into the deck profile, probably on Thursday or Friday, is that you need to keep track of where your 10 cost card is at all times. And so a good way to do that was with like Bulmas. You know, you want to use a Bulma, look through your deck, you know, be very quick about it. You don't want to slow play it or anything like that, you know, but you have 2 different Whis to choose from. So you have to choose the best Whis. And as you're looking for those Whis, make sure that you know, kind of keep track of where those 10 costs are. Because if they're in your life, you have to be very, very careful with using your ability, your leader ability. If they're in your deck, then you know, you need to be really careful with Whis and things like that. So just really kind of keep track of where they're at. And right in our first version, we ran 2. We're probably going to bump it up to 3 of the 10 costs. But just again, a very good skill with this deck is keeping track of those 10 costs and making sure you know where they're at. The last thing is you really need to keep track of your deck size. It's probably one of the only decks that it really matters if you keep track of your deck size, and so you really, really want to do that. You always want to be checking your deck size. Always make sure you know how big it is, because you know, if you get hit too hard, you know, you can literally just lose the game. And so if you have 10 cards left in your deck, you know, you can't afford to get hit by a double strike, and so you need to know that, you know, going into those matchups. Okay, next up, the third thing I learned on the release weekend was, Cell is as good as we thought he would be. There's no surprise, I think, to anyone. If you look at all the events that happened this weekend and you see all the Cell leaders in top 4 or top 8, I don't think that should surprise anyone. We knew when the card was revealed that he was going to be insane, and he really, really is. Now, I will say before I jump into this list, I don't think he's overpowered. I do not think he's going to, destroy the meta. I think that he will be part of the meta, and that's great, right? We want set 2 leaders to continue to influence the game. But I think he does have some weaknesses that we'll talk a little bit about. First off, is he is a powerful overall leader. Both sides are strong. His front side is very strong. His awakened side is even stronger. I mean, it's honestly kind of insane. And so, his front side, you discard a card, or actually you put a card under him, and you can kill a battle card 3 or less. I know I use this a lot against my opponents, and they were always surprised that it was 3 or less. They were like, oh, that's 3 or less? Yeah, I mean, it literally has Beerus's awakened side ability on his front side. Now, if he had to discard the card, that would be one thing, but the fact he puts it under him is really important because on his awakened side, he does the same thing. You can take a card out of your hand, put it under him, and then you draw 2 cards, which is absolutely bonkers. Now, you can also take 2 cards and discard them that's under him and just KO any battle card. And so the fact he gets value out of those cards on his front side later is insane. It's just very good. It's a very smooth hero. I mean, leader, it feels very good. Now, the one downside is he has no way to awaken. And like I talked about earlier, I use TN, and there's probably some other ways to do it. You can, I know our teammate Sawyer used Result of Training, which is very powerful. I know he awakened once with Cell on with 8 life, and it just seemed almost unbeatable. And so there is ways to awaken him, and that's kind of the challenge with that leader. But once you get awakened, I mean, he just seems insane. I mean, he's very, very powerful. Next up is that, you need to have a build against him that can deal with his consistent removal. You need to have, indestructible cards or cards that don't die to skills, like the Whis, the blocker Whis, or the, I think it's the Goku, that's a Super Saiyan 3 Goku that can't die to skills. You just have to have a way to make sure that your cards can survive because, if you get too far behind against Cell, he will just wreck you. I mean, I noticed, again, Sawyer played Cell as well, a very good guy, very good player. And he would, he would put cards under his guy, Cell every turn like you're supposed to, but then he would use Beerus to kill your threat, and then you'd play something else, and he'd use Kelv to kill your threats. And then before you know it, there's 4, 5, 6 cards under Cell, and that's scary because that means the next 3 guys you play are dead for free. And so you have to have a way to get around that when you play against Cell, and I think right now players are just unfamiliar with that, and that's why they're kind of losing to Cell a lot. Next up is, you got to be ready for the Cell's Birth combo decks, which had a lot of good showings currently in the release events, and that is where they play Cell's Birth on 1, on 2 they play like the 3-cost Cell, then or maybe it's on 3 they play the 2-cost, or I guess the 3-cost Cell or whatever. I'm kind of mixing it up because I think it's the 5-cost that gets reduced down to 3, and you play him out, and then you put a card under him and go get another card, and then go and then you keep going until you play the 7-cost Cell, and the 7-cost Cell makes you discard down to 3, and you have this really strong and powerful attacker, and your opponent only has 3 cards in hand. It's very, very powerful. Again, it's a little, essentially I always call it magical Christmas land, where it's not going to happen every time. It's very inconsistent. If it does happen, it's very scary. It's annoying. And again, I had an opponent just do that to me. He played that against me. I still won that game. It didn't feel that scary to me. I literally just used TN the next turn and killed it, and then considered to just essentially awakened with Cell, and then just got my card advantage back. It was fine. But it's still something you need to be prepared for. It's very scary. If you're not prepared for it, you'll lose. That's the thing about a meta. That's why it exists. If you don't know what that meta is, if you don't know what to expect, you will be caught off guard and lose to these things. And so real quick, I'm going to go over some cards that I'll tell you guys about. In red, we have like Miraculous Comeback Ultima Gohan. If they make you discard down, you can just play him out, attack, kill their Cell, and then make also deal 2 damage to them, which is insane. There's also just the fact that if you're just running the low hand size decks, you can use all your cards to take advantage of the fact that he just made you mill down as well. In blue, we have Mafuba, Father-Son Galactic Gun. Insane combos there too. And again, Mafuba doesn't kill Cell, but it will essentially make him not a card for a couple turns until you can play out like, a Beerus or a Zamasu or, another way you can kill him in blue. Green, we have Tien and Enraged Gohan Awakening. Enraged Gohan Awakening is probably going to end up being probably end up being main board in a lot of decks. I'll talk about it in my top 5 Tuesday video. I actually am going to do the top 5 cards that I would underrated in the set review and the spoiler review, and I think this card's definitely going to be one of them. I actually saw it kill my other teammate Chris's Vegito, the secret rare Vegito, and it seems like a great counter to killing this cell. I mean, they play it out, they attack you, you can counter with it, discard a card out of your hand, because you're going to anyway. You're going to have to discard anyway, and then, you know, again, kill one of their guys. So, you know, it's a very powerful effect. Again, it does cost you a card, and that can be very polarizing against this cell combo. But I think it's very powerful and a good way to kill that cell and kind of get you guys more on even footing. And then the last thing I'll talk about is yellow, and that's just Cold Bloodlust, just leaving a yellow open. I mean, that stops the effect completely from happening, which is extremely powerful. And again, just very strong card. And then other than that, Death Razor is another yellow card, which is that you can KO a rested character. So if they attack you with it, you can just Death Razor and kill it. Again, just very powerful cards in yellow. Always, it feels like yellow can almost deal with anything given the right circumstances. And the last thing I'll talk about with Cell is mostly a control leader right now. We're going to see him in Hand Destruction. We're going to see him in the Cell combo decks as well. But another thing to remember, guys, is that Cell and aggro can be very scary. If you can build a Cell aggro deck and find a way essentially to awaken him very quickly, that's the card, I guess, siphoning ability that he has can really fuel a aggro deck to be very aggressive and very scary. So just something to keep in mind when it comes to Cell. Currently, when you sit down and you see a Cell, you're probably going to be playing against some sort of control or Hand Destruction. But just keep in mind that, you know, similar to Vegeta, you don't really always know what you're playing against. So that's very scary. Okay, next up is I'll talk about the last thing, you know, I kind of learned about. There's one more thing I'll talk about at the very end, but it's kind of a more generalistic thing, and that is Vegito is very powerful, guys. I mean, the jury's in, he's powerful, but he is very hard to build. And we've seen a Vegito deck get second in the big California event, and it was very cool Vegito deck. So, you know, it is powerful, it's strong, something to definitely be prepared for, but it is very hard to construct. I know I wanted Vegito to be my first deck build, my deck profile, but I just feel like our version isn't there yet, and I feel like we constantly go through different versions. Me and Chris message each other back and forth all the time, trying to figure out the right build for it. And so, you know, that's just something to remember. You know, don't just take all the Vegetas and all the Gokus and smash them into a deck and be like, I built the best deck. I mean, it's going to take tons and tons of work to really figure out this perfect version. And so I'm going to go over essentially kind of the 3 versions I've seen. You have the ramp version, which is the version that did very well in California. And that is, I think it's the most streamlined version. It's the easiest to play. It's also very easy to construct. Essentially, you just put big Gokus and Vegetas, you know, Princess Speed Vegetas. You put in the dual attack Vegeta, and then you run like the Gokus that when the green Goku, when he comes into play, you kill up to 6, I think, energy worth of guys. You just put big scary threats in there, and then you use Bobbity to go get them, you know, and you just quickly get up to 6, play Bobbity, go get those guys, and just essentially overwhelm your opponent with these big scary creatures. And I think that's awesome. That's a great version. I think that's a very unique version that I know our team talked about a lot, you know, before the set came out, and, you know, we've had great success with it. The next up is the aggro version. That's one that we didn't really think about too much. I didn't really think about this version, but I think it's probably the easiest to build. Well, I mean, like, the ramp version is probably the easiest to play, but I think the aggro version is very easy to build, right? Like, if you have a very low, it's essentially the budget Vegito, and that's awesome. That's great that this deck has that ability, and essentially just uses all the small, like, 2-cost, you know, 15,000, you know, Gokus and Vegetas, and they just attack you all the time, and it's very hard to beat. I mean, not hard to beat. It's hard to deal with, because if you don't have, like, Sensu Beans or something to survive those constant attacks, you know, killing them actually just puts them into their drop area and actually makes their Vegito better. And so it can attack you on both fronts, and so that's very scary, very hard to deal with. And then the next up is the hybrid version, which is the one that my team is currently working on a lot. Me and Chris have been working on it a lot, and honestly, this is probably the hardest to build and the hardest to play. It's very difficult, because what we did is we ran a bunch of stuff that can take Vegetas and Goku, like the counter Goku, for example, could take Vegetas and Gokus out of your hand and put them into the drop area, so you can use that to get your Vegito ability up. You can also use that to pitch a Vegito, so you can use the next, like we call him the big nose Vegito, but it's the one that looks kind of funky. I think it's the 5-cost or 6-cost Patora, which which, you know, you can put Tora 2 in, and when he attacks, you mill 10 and then pick another Vegito and put on top of him. And so you can use that Goku to pitch your Vegito and put him in the your 7-cost Vegito in the drop area, and then attack with the 5-cost, get him and put him back on, and then so he has like all these plays. That's just like one card, right? There's tons of those interactions with a lot of the different cards in the deck. So it's been very difficult to play, but I think it has the ability to be the strongest version of Vegito. And it's just again, we just need more testing. I can't say that enough. We just haven't had the time to really test. And so those are the 3 versions. You have the hybrid, you have the aggro, you have the ramp version. All very powerful, guys. Again, I want to kind of you know, say it one more time that this deck is very hard to play, and so you need to test a lot. If you lose, I've seen a lot of people when they lose with decks, they'll just go, "This deck's bad, I quit. This deck sucks." You know, Zamasu, I've seen that a lot this week, where Zamasu stinks, I lost. It just takes a lot of time, guys, to break these decks and to really figure them out. I know whenever I built a hand destruction deck, I bet you I play tested 30 games of that deck, and it changed so much in between that. And so you just got to keep playing, guys. Really stick with it. It's a lot of plays to make in those decks, depending on the version you're playing. And honestly, it's going to get better with each set. And so it's a good investment. If you're a new player in this game, my prediction and what I would tell you to do is to get this deck. It's a great deck. It's you can continually add to it as you get new cards. You have the aggro version, so you can build the budget deck, and then you can add to it, and build like the ramp version or the hybrid version. And then going into set 3, your deck's going to be just as good. You're going to get more Gokus, more Vegetas. As it turns out, those characters are pretty popular, and so I'm pretty confident when I say that there'll probably be more Gokus and Vegetas in the future, and you can keep adding to the deck. And so it's a fantastic new player deck. And so again, guys, just remember that this is a archetype. It will be here to stay. It is powerful. Be prepared for it. And then the last thing that I'll say about this release weekend was I'm just excited to build, guys. I tell you, we went down to that case tournament. It was about a 3.5-hour drive. We drove down there. I met up with my other teammates, Jordan, Zach, and Sawyer. Me, Chris, and John Tata went, and we just had an amazing time. And I'll tell you that the whole time I was there, even the way back, you know, in the car, we just talked more about the game. When I got home, I just almost immediately jumped on Octagon and played 4 or 5 games as well. It's just insane. Like, I cannot get enough of this game, and this set 2 just really has made me even more excited to build. Some decks I'm really thinking about working on are Papa Chilled. I want to get into that deck. Trunks, I know we've seen a couple Trunks deck at the event. They looked really neat. It's been on our radar for a long time. I know we have like 2 or 3 skeleton lists just kind of moving around the group and stuff too that we've been talking about. Android 17, 18 looked awesome. I know that one person I played against used it, and it was very scary. And also Metacooler is something that just, every time I look at that deck, I feel like it might be a little bit better than I'm giving it credit for. And so, guys, I got a new green screen, and I've worked on some new overlays, and so I will be streaming Octagon probably starting next week. And then I'll be trying out all these builds, and I'm also going to be doing a deck doctor thing where I essentially take a deck each week. I'll use that deck throughout the week and make it better, you know, make videos on it and stuff. Because again, I want to start giving back to you guys, and I think that's a great way to do it. And again, I'll also be posting Octagon gameplay probably daily on the not only the YouTube channel, but on my Patreon when that goes live as well. And so I'm really excited to play this game. I'm really excited to start building. I think I can bring you guys a lot of content on Octagon. So, all right, guys, that's it for this episode of Meta Monday. I'm sorry it's a little bit longer than they normally are. It was very excited to talk to you guys about this stuff. Again, I love game theory. I love going to events and meeting you guys. I want to do a couple special shout outs. I want to say a special shout out to my team. Again, Jordan Mackle. We have Sawyer, Zach, John, and Chris. They all came down to the event. They represented Kitchen Table Meta unbelievably. I've had so much good feedback from them. You know, everybody they played, they were respectful, and I feel like they're representing the brand correctly. We didn't have as good of a showing as what I think we wanted to, but also we had to play against each other a lot. I know in both round 1 and round 2, I think we 4 of us had to play. I think it was 2-2 the first round, and then maybe only me and Sawyer had to play the second round, which was my fault. I actually made a play mistake my first round, which got me a game loss. So then because of that, I had to play Sawyer. And so we just kind of had, you know, we had to play each other a lot, which happens in small events. And so that kind of hurt our showing. But honestly, our players were awesome. They had some great ideas, and I just couldn't be more proud to have them on the team and to have them representing my brand. So thank you guys very much for being there. The second shout out I want to give is just to Dream Wizards, the shop we went to. Their judging staff was very good, and also the players were amazing. I mean, they couldn't give us any more support. Between every round, I had people run up to me saying thank you. I took some pictures with some people. It was just an amazing experience. And like I said, you guys just never cease to amaze me. It feels like every event I go to, I just couldn't be more happy with my community, and just thank you guys so much for being just an absolutely amazing community and just fantastic to be a part of. And the last thing I'll talk about, guys, is tomorrow for Top 5 Tuesday, I'll be doing the top 5 cards that I underrated, that I thought weren't going to be very good, which turned out to be pretty freaking good cards in set 2 on Tuesday, on tomorrow. So again, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you so much for watching. Also, guys, I got a new trophy again to add to the bookcase. Thank you guys so much for all this, the love, the support. I just could not mean more, and you guys are just amazing. So guys, I'll see you next time.